Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my one of co-hosts and best friend.
Oh,
Hey man, great to see you. So today we're concluding the original Rocky films with part two of our Rocky podcasts, and I'm just going to pass over to Callum to explain what three films we're going to be talking about today. So Callum, off to you, man.
so I think this is a very rare occurrence where we were looking forward to finally finishing a series, capping it off,
Oh yeah,
before we covered, series like Star Wars, and I think we were dreading the prequels. There was Planet of the Apes, and I think we were dreading the Marky Mark film, and
yeah.
the other really low budget, sequels.
hmm
But here, I was actually really, really excited. I was overly eager. In fact, I watched these directly after watching one through three.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about Rocky Four, Rocky Five, and Rocky Balboa, with the intention to talk about Creed in a couple of weeks. And these films, I was really surprised because I said to you, I sort of theorized that you can't have six good films. Like I mean, I don't love the first Rocky, but I can't say it's a bad film. But I thought there has to be a stinker, and I predicted it would be number five, and that is the critics' consensus. But I still really enjoyed it. I
I
think
still really enjoyed it as
this is a
well.
pretty set deck.
Yeah, they're these three are actually pretty entertaining as well. Like they're all decent. I have a bit of a hot take as to which one I'm not a huge fan of quality wise. Although all of them I was definitely entertained by. Although there is one in here where I think it's definitely the weakest out of the six so far. But that being said, I'm really looking forward to reading these because I think Rocky Four is like the definitive Rocky film for a lot of people. So looking forward to getting into that as well. But yeah, just before we kick off today's episode, thanks to everyone who supported the channel recently. Callum and I both appreciate it. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the Rocky films down below. We'd love to hear them. And of course, our email is always in the description at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. So Rocky Four, the definitive Rocky film for a lot of people, where basically America takes on Russia in a battle of communism, so to speak, which is a very weird take for the film, isn't it? It's very strange.
Yeah, it's Rocky solves the Cold War. It's bizarre.
It is
And
bizarre. It
I think
certainly
we'll
is.
sort of go on to all those bizarre depictions when we talk about Ivan Drago, because he is sort of introduced quite early on. But I just wanted to give the opening remark. The film opens with uh, a birthday party, and whose birthday is it? Someone we care about? No, it's
No,
Paulie. Paulie doesn't
Paulie's
deserve to
birthday.
celebrate a birthday. He doesn't
He,
deserve it.
I think he's got a cake of his own face as well. That's
And
that's
then
where.
he's given like a sex robot that he falls in love with or something.
Yeah, what is a robot doing in this film? What is that? That's so weird. The
I don't
weirdest
know.
opening to
Like
a film I've ever
there's no
seen.
reason why it's there. He like
I
he
really hate
gives a
Paulie.
sexy voice so that he can like degrade it as he does with every other woman. He's just a special kind of piece of shit.
I really don't like him. I really don't like Paulie at
No,
all.
he's
I,
he's he's genuinely like one of my least favorite like main characters in a series ever. But like
absolutely.
you know, obviously there's a lot of films where like one of the main characters is actually a villain. Like this character is meant to be like like a lovable scamp or something.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
just terrible. Like I think he's
yeah,
even worse in
yeah,
Rocky Balboa. Like I think he peaks at Rocky Balboa, like
yeah.
peak awfulness. But here he's still riding that wave of just being a real twat.
He is, he is. And in contrary to that, I think the Adrian Rocky relationship is a little bit better here, to be honest with you. And
Yeah,
there's
it seems a bit more
it
consensual
does. Yeah,
post Rocky.
that's always a good thing. That's always a good thing. But one thing that really surprised me about this film is that it's so incredibly short, and it's only an hour and 27 minutes long. And I would say a good at least 10 minutes of that are scenes or montages that have been previously shown in previous films. So I would say
Yeah,
an hour and 15 minutes is the runtime for this. And that's generous. That is generous. So a little bit disappointed in that because I've heard a lot about this film being like the definitive peak of Rocky films, but I don't know, man. I don't think this film is a good film at all. I think the quality it's so incredibly bad, but entertainment it's really good. I
how
think this film
dare you?
I think this film sucks. To be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're actually talking about like quality over enjoyment, I don't think any of the Rocky films are good.
That's
Like,
fair.
I
Yeah,
think
that's fair.
Creed one and two are pretty fantastic, but pretty much all the Rocky films, I would say the most like appealing to critics is probably Rocky Balboa, but I would say what 1 through 5, quality wise, pretty dreadful. But I don't know. You sort of mentioned the sort of clip shows that appear throughout the film that are clearly just used to, sort of artificially force in runtime. And like there's one scene where Rocky's driving in a car and he's just like flashbacking on like all of all of the films that have come previously. It's just bizarre.
It is
Like there's this
bizarre.
like weird like haze filter where he's just like looking back on memories, but it doesn't make sense in the context because he's just like Creed, like Apollo Creed has just died, which is like we'll go into that obviously. But Apollo Creed has just died, but all the memories that he's like reminiscing on are ones of him and Adrian, and I'm like, what? Like, why are your thoughts not on your dead best friend?
Dude. Apollo Creed's ring walk is absolutely. And I just I don't know what the fuck kind of exhibition fight is this? Where like Apollo Creed's got like
I
these
know.
dancing girls and he's coming down the living in America and he's just like,
Like
what is
such a
that?
moped.
Like I actually really like Apollo in this, but like what is that? Like what
Yeah,
is
no,
that
he's
scene?
he's
It's
he's, he's
so
an arrogant twat. Like,
I like him
I
here
think
though. I
he's a
do I like
likable
that.
dickhead, but he is one. And I thought that Creed, believed that America was like the land of opportunity. That was sort of, the premise of the first film. But like, as soon as someone from a different country comes to America for recognition, he wants to challenge him. Like, clearly his reasoning is like really he wants to prove he still has it and has what it takes. But his justification to Rocky is like inconsistent with his beliefs. He's like, I want to tear down the Soviet Union, and I'm like, what? Like,
What?
but surely, it's not like he's in their perspective, he is the physical embodiment of communism, I guess. But why is that? What does that got to do with like a physical fight? Like
Yeah.
you don't prove anything by doing that.
Yeah.
But if we want to talk a little bit about Ivan Drago, I sort of always questioned in the Rocky films how any of these characters had the title of like world heavyweight champion when they never challenged anyone who was non-American. They had the world title,
Yeah.
but like every single one that we had seen, I mean, even the match with Apollo, sorry, even the matches with Ivan Drago, that the title's never on the line there.
Yeah.
So we've never seen in these films as of this point a non-American world title holder.
I
Like
know
we
it
don't see
is
that until the
unusual.
Creed films.
Yeah, like this is the first like non-American opponent that's ever really seen, I think, in any of the films. And I think that's maybe broken with Creed where he fights that English guy who's like Tony Bellew, like the real life boxer. I can't remember what his actual name is. Ricky Conlon, that's
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, like I think it's really weird. Like I think Dolph Lundgren is an absolute beast. To be fair, like Dolph Lundgren is a huge like man mountain. But like there's a funny scene where, like when the press asked Drago's crew whether he has taken any steroids, I have never seen a more guilty face in my life and I think the film kind of presents that as some kind of reveal as well when like there's a montage and he's like injecting himself with like illegal substances. I think that's I don't know if that's kind of made to be a reveal or not, but I suppose like there's a funny scene where like when Apollo and him face off and they're supposed to be able to touch gloves, like whenever Apollo touches his glove it makes like a really weird clanking sound which is never heard again. I thought it was quite unusual. But no,
Yeah.
Drago's a beast, love it.
Yeah. He I think is by far the best nemesis,
Yeah,
because
agreed,
he's the only one that ever feels evil. Like, I mean, he isn't evil, there's obviously there's depths and layers to his character, and really he's just overly competitive. I mean, obviously the blasé way in which he says, if he dies, he dies. That's obviously indicative of a bad moral character.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's evil. I mean, they've obviously consented to this high contact, very dangerous sport, and he may just be a bit immoral.
Yeah,
But this character I think is by far the best nemesis of the franchise,
I
and I
agree.
really, if I have to appreciate something in this franchise, like it's the versatility of the antagonist as such.
Oh, absolutely,
First there was
absolutely.
like Apollo Creed, who was a businessman, and then Clubber Lang, who was sort of the loudmouth competitive person, and here it's just a silent killer.
I like
You know,
that. I quite like the fact that he
I
doesn't
love that
speak. I think yeah, it's
because
kind of
then
intimidating.
it's like Caesar in the Planet of the Apes films, or the characters within the previous franchise or the previous entries in that franchise, where the power of speech is so powerful. The power of speech is
Oh
so
yeah,
integral to sort of the message of the film,
100%.
because when he's only had two lines, and then like one of those few moments where we get a glimpse of his character is him saying, "I must break you."
Yeah, yeah,
It's so
absolutely. Yeah,
powerful.
I know, and I think you're right. But like you said, Apollo Creed is sort of characterized by that, that sort of businessman who he's deep down he's a good guy, but he just wants he wants to prove he's the best. Clubber Lang was characterized by his hunger for the sport and his loudmouth, brash attitude. Whereas like here, Ivan Drago is just like a Terminator, like a stone cold killer, and well, quite literally. And I kind of confused me. He never faced any repercussions for that in particular. I suppose like he was made to fight in. I think he was made to fight in Soviet Union, wasn't he? Or maybe not actually. I think maybe that was a choice, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, he doesn't face any like trials or doesn't get his boxing license removed for
Yeah,
that conduct.
I did some research, and I sort of looked up what happens if you kill someone in the ring, and apparently because obviously you've consented to the high contact dangerous sport, you can't be arrested for murder or manslaughter unless there was like purposeful intent to kill them.
Yeah.
But I feel like him going on video and saying if he dies, he dies, it's sort of not great.
Yeah.
It's sort of not great for his case. If he's like,
If he
I feel like there
dies,
would be
he
a trial
dies.
there, as
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said.
yeah, absolutely. Like, Apollo's death is devastating, but I find it really confusing. It's actually not done in an actual scene. Like, it's actually done in a weird montage, as well. And you know what? That being said, I think I really respect Apollo for wanting to take the Drago fight. Like, I think it's good. Like, even though the press kind of
Well,
ridicules him,
it's sort of xenophobia, where
it
he's
is, it
just
is,
like,
it
I don't
is.
like anyone coming into my country
Yeah, I respect it from the
and
sense that he
showing me
wants to
up,
be the best. I don't respect it for like, yeah, the xenophobia, of course. But I think the press kind of unfairly ridicules Drago for like he's who like they're saying like, oh, who have you fought? You're in our country now, the home of boxing. But I mean, clearly like clearly he is like
the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
yeah, yeah, I know. Like clearly Drago is to have some quality where Apollo Creed wants to fight him. Like he's clearly very successful in his native country. So yeah, that's kind of ties back to the whole kind of thing. Like we've never really seen like any other countries involved in these films from like a world heavyweight perspective. So that is definitely refreshing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this dude like towers above Stallone, and they're like, this silly little guy coming from his silly little
Yeah,
country.
yeah,
And I'm
literally.
like,
I know.
well, there's quite a famous, impression, whether it's, a misinterpretation or not, that, that there's certain assumptions that, men from Russia are, dangerous. So
Mhm.
if a lot of the characters in this film sort of have this like xenophobic attitude of like, oh, this guy from a different country coming into our country, you would think they'd more likely be scared than like, oh, this silly little
Yeah,
scamp.
yeah, literally. I
Like
know.
it's
I
a really
know.
weird attitude to take.
It is a really
And
weird one.
we've talked a little bit about Creed's death, and I'm very sad that I knew about it because his death is tragic, and I wish I hadn't known. But I do have to say, him coming down to like, as you said, "Living in America" by James Brown, it's a fantastic song. But like the performance of the musical number feels really really antagonistic towards Drago.
It
Like,
does.
fuck
Yeah.
you, you're in our country now.
Yeah.
Where like
Exactly.
he really just
Exactly.
wants to be he just really wants to be in the home of competition, where he can get some recognition, for his like adept skill at fighting, but
Yeah.
he's just really antagonized, and I think that probably riled him up.
Yeah, it didn't really feel like it didn't really fit the Apollo Creed development of the character. I think, like it did and it didn't, I suppose, because like we can sort of see like when that sort of like musical number is finished, he's in the game. Rocky's telling like don't be slow and stuff, and then he's like, no, no, don't worry about it, Stallion. Like I've got this, and then like he does quite well initially. But I do agree. I definitely would have antagonized Drago for sure.
Like, because I mean, Drago knew that he was participating in an exhibition fight, so I don't think that he would have gone hard enough to kill him if there wasn't the
Hmm.
preceding situations of like the mockery and the antagonism. But there's one moment where Drago continues punching after the bell's gone like six
Yeah.
times,
Hmm.
and like surely that's in breach of the rules. Like they don't call
Yeah.
off the fight, and Rocky throughout this film and throughout Creed films is criticized for not throwing in the towel. which I didn't think was a literal phrase. Like, I didn't realize a coach could actually
Yeah,
literally
white towel.
finish it by
Yeah,
throwing in the
yeah.
towel. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, would you think the coach would really be the best assessor of how the fight's going? Like, surely it would be down to the person who's having the fight. I mean, this sort of
Mhm.
comes in quite strongly into future films, but yeah, I mean, what do you think of that? Like, do you think it should be the call of the coach or of the fighter?
Well, it's an interesting one, like because it's a really interesting one because I think when you're watching a fight, be it like in a Rocky film or a real life one, like you can always tell if if this person's gonna get knocked out. Like in the case of like where Ivan Drago is like repeatedly punching after the bell, like he 100% should have been disqualified there, or at least deducted a lot of points. But no, I think it should probably be the role of ideally the fighter, but in a practical sense, it makes more sense for the coach because I'd say in like the case of Apollo Creed where he says do not throw the towel in no matter what, it resulted in his death, which was unfortunate. But no, it's a difficult one to balance. I think, mate, it's a really difficult one to balance. I think that probably the fight probably just should have been called off.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. And if we want to talk about Rocky then deciding to fight Drago, I
Mm-hmm.
don't really see why Rocky should have to give up his title or his professional status to fight Drago, because I understand that Drago he must just have an amateur status because he's presumably only fought in like sort of seedy underground boxing rings. But I would have thought that like his status would change following his defeat of Creed, or is it just because it was an exhibition fight? Was it not like a chance to? I know the title, like no title was on the line, but I thought his status, if he was fighting the former like heavyweight champion of the world, I thought his status would increase like from amateur to professional.
I think an exhibition fight doesn't count towards a professional record. I think so. Like in the case, I suppose, in Rocky Balboa, where Rocky fights Mason Dixon in a charity bout, I think that's an exhibition fight as well. Excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not too sure actually how that would work. But I would imagine he would have a pro boxer license to fight Apollo Creed in in the I think he probably would be a professional boxer initially. But I don't know if that would be that probably would have been like his first professional fight. Like you said, he probably was probably more of like fighting sort of locally in Russia, I suppose, like Rocky was in Philadelphia.
But
But
then,
yeah.
do you think it's fair that Rocky then has to sacrifice his status?
Not really, mate, because like Rocky was the established champ, yeah. So and Drago's only had one. It's kind of a similar thing. Like we've mentioned the YouTube boxing in the last episode. It's kind of a similar thing where like we see Logan Paul's fighting Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition fight, but let's say somehow Logan Paul wins that fight. No, I don't think that automatically should make him a challenger for every other like heavyweight champ
Yeah,
of the world. Or
very
likewise,
fair.
I think if Floyd Mayweather wins that fight, well, if Floyd Mayweather wins that fight, which he probably will, I don't think that means he should have to vacate or his title for another fight, if you know what I mean. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one, but I don't know. The whole YouTube boxing thing, really, I love that stuff. I love it so much. I know we're going a bit off topic here, but I don't know. I think it's great.
Which is the next fight? Is it like Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather? Is that the next
That's
scheduled
the
one?
next. It's kind of weird to think that started with Joe Weller and Theo Baker doing a boxing video. That is so weird.
Have
Like,
you seen that one?
I have seen that. I have seen that. It's quite funny as
It's
well. Actually,
embarrassing. It's
it's funny.
hilarious.
But yeah, I can't believe like Logan Paul's fighting Floyd Mayweather. That's a crazy fight. But anyway, back to Rocky Four. I thought one thing I
So
thought. Go ahead, mate.
no, you go ahead.
Well, one thing I wanted to say about like Apollo's funeral is that I kind of found it a little bit funny that like Rocky was sort of dressed like a Men in Black agent with like the black suit and the shades on and the funeral. That was really really strange, really bizarre.
Yeah, I just don't think he's a character that would exist in real life. Like
Unfortunately, not.
I can sort of see like Creed as sort of like the shrewd businessman, but
Mhm.
I feel like Rocky's just like too chaotic a character to like fit into this world and be so likable.
Yeah,
Because I mean, there are plenty of fighters who do like weird stuff and they have like weird quirks and weird personalities, but I feel like they don't have like the worldwide acceptance or recognition that Rocky has. Like he's the heavyweight champion of the world. Whereas do you see a lot of like weird personalities? I mean, we see more in wrestling that you have this sort of like outlandish persona, and I really think like Clubber Lang sort of had more of a wrestler's persona.
yeah, that's
But like
true.
Rocky just seems like a weird dude.
Yeah, he does. He really does, and it's kind of a question that I I agree with you, but like, that's kind of a question leads into the question I wanted to ask you. Was this is sort of the last film? Uh, I think I think this might be the last Rocky film ever to have the main antagonist be an actor rather than a professional boxer. I think because I think in Rocky Five, Tommy Gunn was, I think his name was Tommy Morrison. Like I think he was like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
held the championship belt, and then Rocky Balboa. I think the boxer who played Mason Dixon was a heavyweight champ for a time as well. And then obviously we've seen Tony Bellew who plays Ricky Conlan and stuff in Creed. But no, what do you think about this being the last performance of an actor? Because obviously we see with the later films where it's a professional boxer, I think that the fight scenes automatically go up a level. But that being said, I think I think Dolph Lundgren's pretty good in the boxing scenes as well. But you can obviously tell that Sly is not a professional boxer, if you know what I mean. But
yeah.
yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it like first and foremost, only about like 1/3 of the film involves actual like punching in a ring.
Yeah,
So I feel like depth of character and ability of acting is more important than the fighting ability. And we sort of see I would say Rocky Balboa especially. I think Tony Bellew actually does a really great job in Creed.
I agree.
Uh,
Yeah,
but and Tommy Morrison's obviously terrible. We'll get into that with Rocky Five. But, Mason Dixon, I have absolutely no issue with the performance. I don't know what the actor's name is. Do you know?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I don't know, mate. It's all on top of
But,
my head.
I have no issue with his performance. He's just not in it enough. But I would normally value a traditional actor who can carry a scene.
Yeah,
And I had no issues with the performance in Rocky Balboa, but the lack of screen time for that character was probably where my issue was. And then obviously Tommy Morrison's just fucking dreadful.
yeah,
Mr. T wasn't even a fighter. He's actually a professional actor. He was terrible. But obviously Dolph Lundgren and Carl Weathers, I think, stand far above any of the
agreed.
other
Absolutely,
villains. I mean, that said, Tony Bellew is fantastic. If we're talking Rocky films, Carl Weathers and Dolph Lundgren, I
absolutely.
think, stand a huge notch above.
Yeah, for sure, dude, for sure.
And we've sort of talked about Apollo Creed's reasoning behind wanting to fight Ivan Drago. Don't really see why Rocky would want to fight Drago because I really think beating him doesn't prove anything. Creed was fighting to prove he still had it, and Rocky beating him doesn't affirm that in himself in any way. It's just vengeance. But
Yeah,
I feel like if they saw it like you know actual judicial
yeah.
justice, that would probably give him more satisfaction than just beating him up. Like I think it's just something in my brain just doesn't equate beating someone up with being satisfying. Like I think it's maybe just that he's obviously inclined as a fighter, and I just don't have that. So maybe that motivation just doesn't come to me immediately.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, buddy, because we see in the first few Rocky films, at least, his desire to fight has been through hunger and from a desire to prove people wrong. Whereas in this film, it is from the unusual motive of vengeance. And usually, like for a typical film, that would be something that would cost the lead character. But here we see that it ends up it works for him. So that is quite an unusual one because it's typically quite a bad emotion to have vengeance for the most part, anyway. And in the actual fight with Ivan Drago, I think it is really well done, to be fair. But like, there's so I was like, what are these boxing rules? We see that Rocky gets knocked down by Drago like 3 times, and the referee doesn't like do a standing count or anything like that, or doesn't stop the fight. It seemed more like UFC or something rather than boxing because like automatically, if you get knocked down, you have to have a 10 count. But there's just no
Yeah, I
10
mean,
counts
like
here.
in the fight between like Annie's son Gabe and Jake Paul, like I think Gabe just got knocked down twice and then they called the fight. Like, and
Yeah, there's the
here,
three knockdown rule. Yeah, like if you're knocked down three
yeah,
times in a round, you're out. So yeah,
but then like yeah, Rocky gets like pummeled, and they're just like, yeah, keep it going,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
fine.
I know, I
But
know.
then,
What?
do you think
Yeah,
that's the film like again criticizing like the Soviet Union and being like, oh, they play dirty, they play by their own rules? Like, do you think that's them just being furtherly offensive about like what they deem as like morality?
yeah, I think so, mate. But it's weird because the Rocky character is he's kind of like a dirty street brawler as well. I mean, we see that in Rocky Five, where like he's not like a dirty boxer, but like he's clearly like a street fighter as well. Where like
Yeah,
sorry, speaking of Rocky Five, that is the strangest final 10 minutes of a film I've ever seen.
it's
But anyway,
hilarious.
in this film, yeah, I do agree with you. I think maybe the film is. I can't tell if it's like criticizing being xenophobic or not. it's weird. I can't tell if it's
Oh no, because no, I definitely think it's like pro them. Like, well, yeah, it's interesting because obviously the final message that Rocky gives is that if I can change, you can change too. And I'm like, well, why do they have to change? Like, what's wrong with them?
yeah, yeah,
Like it's just that they're like under a regime that you don't like. Don't blame the people. Like if you dislike the regime, yeah, go ahead, do that. But like,
yeah.
why are you saying the people need to change?
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so I don't know because they are still saying like, you're capable of change, but the fact that he's saying they need to change at all, like I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm agree with you, mate. I agree with you. I don't actually have any more notes in this film, bud. So I'm just gonna have to rely on you for any more remarks in the film if you have any.
Just a few final things, I loved how different the training sequence is here. I think we'd
Oh,
be
absolutely,
remiss
that's a
in
good
not
point.
mentioning it because there's obviously a training sequence in every film. I loved how different it was. Like I feel it had all the necessary references, but it still felt very new. Did you
Absolutely,
feel the same?
absolutely. I love
Like
the
seeing him
landscape.
trek
Yeah,
through the snow, I thought was very different.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's weird because like I thought that it always confused me. Like there was like it had sort of seemed like Drago's team had sort of sorted out Rocky with people of Russia who would assist him in like driving in places and stuff, which I thought was quite weird. But no, that being said, I thought the training montage was great. I thought him climbing up the mountain and stuff is a nice change of pace, and it was nice to see Stallone. Nice to see the Rocky character outside of Philadelphia for a change.
Yeah, and the final fight of the film comes with Paulie finally declaring respect for Rocky, and saying, I've loved you all, this whole time. But it comes far too late for me to respect, and then it's basically recanted in the further films by him behaving as the same dickhead as always.
Agreed. The Polly character is not one I like at all. To be honest, I think if he was not in these films, it would work even better. To be honest, I think he actually actively makes the films worse. If I'm honest.
Yeah, no, he does definitely. Like because I think it would have felt. I think the romance uh between Rocky and Adrian would have felt a bit more natural and organic if there wasn't, this guy basically trying to sell his sister because he's embarrassed of her.
Yeah,
I felt like that came across very poorly.
yeah,
As
absolutely.
to oppose because I mean, the only reason she even goes out with Rocky is because Polly like throws her turkey out and says like, "Oh well, what better do you have to do, you fucking loser?" And I'm
Yeah,
like, well, if Rocky had just
yeah.
asked her and she said yes, I'd feel a lot more confident about like the consent in
Literally,
this
man.
relationship. So what made me feel uncomfortable was really Polly's role in that
Mhm,
like the like
mhm.
third wheel manipulator, and I'm like, you're the fucking loser. Where's your girlfriend, you dickhead?
Yeah,
It's
literally.
like why do you think you're any better? It's
Oh
like
man,
I don't
never
know.
has a truer word been
I really
spoken.
despise him.
Agreed.
But yeah, we've talked about the fight and like the fact that Rocky is not only alive but like conscious even, after that many hits is like a stretch of believability because they sort
Yeah,
of say he has like, an iron jaw or whatever, but he's dead.
yeah,
But we'll talk about that in Rocky Five where there are actually repercussions, which I respect.
for sure.
But I really still don't feel like a knockout should outweigh the importance of the other rounds. If Drago, won so many of the rounds, but then Rocky knocking him out at the end just, makes that all redundant. What was the point?
Yeah, no, that's true. I know what you mean. I do 100%. Like it
What was the
is.
point of going the distance, like,
Yeah.
and amassing all these points if it's just cancelled out by a knockout?
No, that's true. It's so true. Like it is a staple of the Rocky films where like his legendary chin carries him through the to the later rounds where he finally lands a knockout blow or gets a split decision. But no, you're right. I think you're right, 100%.
Yeah, that's everything I have on the film. So Matthew, would you like to rate the film?
Yes, I'd probably have to rate this film in two ways for quality and entertainment.
Yeah,
For
fair.
me, I'll start with the latter. So I'll start with quality. Sorry, the former quality. Uh, I think the poor pacing of the film, with a lot of the film's runtime being replayed scenes, and the really unusual nature of some of the scenes, with Apollo Creed's ring walk to the weird robot to Paulie's inclusion in general. I think it's a very strange film. I'd give it a 5. For entertainment, give it a 9. I think Ivan Drago is the best protagonist thus far. Dolph Lundgren's amazing. And I really like like you said, buddy, the training montage is excellent. And Apollo's death was I really respected that move. If I wish I didn't know as well, because I think if I didn't know that, it would have blown me away, to be honest. But a 5 for quality, a 9 for entertainment. What about you, dude?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go much the same. I'm gonna go a 5 for quality, a 10 for entertainment, because
Love it.
like I can't doubt, like, even in the moments where I was like, this is terrible, it was hilarious.
Yeah,
Where I
agreed.
was like,
Yeah.
why is there a 4 minute montage like right after Apollo's death of like, oh, here's how I like wore down my wife into going on a date with me. Like I don't know, it just felt really odd. There was something
Agreed.
I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
In relation to Rocky Four. There was this podcast that was released last year, and it was called Finding Drago. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the premise. It's this Australian podcast on the ABC network, and it's the vague concept of their sort of overarching series is a true crime series where no crime has been committed. So they're doing this like investigative journalism that you would do for like a normal documentary, but it's for something really stupid and like
That sounds
inconsequential.
good. Sounds
And
good.
and it's by Alexi Toliopoulos and Cameron James, and it's really fantastic. I listened to it a few days ago,
Awesome.
but it's a 7 part series. It's now been renamed Finding Desperado because of the second season, which is about something completely different. But the first season is about an entry on the Wikipedia page of Rocky Four that said the life of Ivan Drago is further chronicled in the short story Drago on Mountains We Stand by Todd Noy. And that really intrigued Alexi Toliopoulos into creating this podcast, which then investigated who Todd Noy was, what this book was about, and they read it, they dissect it, and then it's all about this like
Yeah.
mythology about like fraud within fiction, and it's really fantastic, and I would highly recommend it.
That
It's
sounds
super
awesome. Yeah.
weird, and
That
I know
sounds
you love
cool,
true
man.
crime, and
Yeah.
I think you'd really like it. And they're like really big film fans, so they're just constantly like making references to like Rocky Four and like Everybody Loves Raymond. Like it's just weird in the way
Yeah,
that I
but
think
that
you would
sounds
really
really
appreciate.
interesting. Yeah, if I find it, mate, I'll link it in the description for people to see if anyone's
Yeah, so
interested.
if you're linking it, like it's currently called Finding Desperado, but
No
season one
problem.
was Finding Drago.
No worries. Yeah, that's a good wee shout. Yeah, for sure. The next film we're going to be talking about is Rocky Five, which is a big departure from the other films. I think this is the first film, well, the only film of the Rocky franchise to be released in the '90s, and it's a weird one as well. It's a strange one, but that being said, it sort of builds more in the Rocky Robert relationship, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I was like, who the fuck's Robert? Yeah, yeah. Yes, it definitely does, and I think that is contributed to by the casting of Sylvester Stallone's real son,
Yeah,
C.H. Stallone,
yeah.
which sort of builds the chemistry. But if you're gonna recast like Robert, why not cast someone who's actually the age the kid is meant to be? Like this is set like 2 weeks after Rocky Four, and he's grown about 4 years.
He has, hasn't he? Oh man, he really has. I like that character goes through a million character transitions in this film. From like a being bullied to beating
From a
kids
piece
up
of
to
shit to a piece of shit to
yeah, just
finalizing as a piece of shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, there's a really weird scene that involves him that I'll just get right out of the bat. Where like I think Rocky's admiring his son's artwork, and he pulls out a bizarre painting of a woman, and Robert goes, "That's Madame Dupont, my French teacher." The first thing that crossed my mind there is that Dupont is that in relation to Mr. Dupont from Riverdale? Probably not, but I quite like that anyway. That is a weird scene to include in
Yeah,
this movie, isn't it?
yeah. I was like, even if you're like happy that your son's like showing interest in women, the fact it's like his teacher like crosses a boundary and his dad's just like, that's cool, kid. Keep on wanting to bang your French teacher. And I'm like, this isn't like a cool like father son bonding moment. But like the moment I thought you were gonna reference is where he's wearing, or he's like, uh, he's the classic '90s kid. He's like, it's Christmas Day and he's like with his former bullies and he's wearing like a feather earring and he's like, "You don't know me, Dad." And I was like, "Oh, what a piece of garbage!" Like I hate this.
I actually this is the film where I like Rocky the most, I think, or definitely up there. He seems like for the most
100%.
part, like although he prioritizes Tommy Gunn for the most part, Tommy Gunn's such an asshole, isn't he? God damn it. Uh,
Yeah,
but no, I do quite like Rocky in this, to be honest. I think he's quite nice.
yeah. I mean, Sage Stallone gives me like massive like Edward Furlong vibes from Terminator 2 of like
Yeah,
classic trying to be cool '90s kid who's just failing massively.
yeah.
But as you said about Stallone. I really appreciated that there were actual repercussions for the beating he took in Rocky
Mm,
Four,
yeah,
because like I don't think someone like could actually live through that, let alone like keep their brain intact. So
absolutely.
it proved that he wasn't indestructible, and I really respected that because they were sort of like treating him as such in all the previous films.
Million
And
percent.
I think as you said, like I really did like Rocky in this film, and it's the first time I've actually appreciated Sylvester Stallone's performance. Like when he called his wife Mick, I actually felt quite emotional because
Yeah.
you could see that he's clearly just like broken something in himself.
Hmm. Yeah, the Mickey flashbacks in this actually made me really emotional, actually, because it's not a character I massively liked in the first three films, but I have to admit I did quite like the Rocky Mickey dynamic for the most part, and I like seeing Rocky in this more experienced role where like everything he says is like Mick told me this, Mick told me that, so that the character of Mick lives on, it seems, in that, which I quite liked.
Can we once again talk about Holly being the worst character in history?
Let's do
Because
it. Let's do it.
he loses all of their money, and they go from living this really affluent life to returning to exactly where they started from in the first film. And basically Rocky has taken this massive beating and gotten brain damage, and he has nothing to show for it. Other than of course his family, but every financial or professional success he's had, like Polly is pissed on the toilet.
Yeah, Paulie's just like, it's not my fault. Like, it
Yeah,
is
I
your
mean,
fault,
like,
Paulie.
obviously it is. If you say like, "Oh yeah, here, accountant, take this money and do what you wish with it," if he runs away with it, that's your fault.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh god. One thing I did find funny about this movie is not Paulie, of course, but it's the fact that Rocky has become somewhat of a of a magician, because every scene he's
How
in,
so, Matthew?
every scene he's in, he pulls out something from behind someone's ear, be it some Russian currency or something else. So I find that quite humorous. Not as humorous though as Tommy Gunn's mullet, which it's not a good look, is it?
Yeah, I really don't have much on Tommy Gunn, because he's basically just a caricature of a character, and that's obviously down to Tommy Morrison's, like,
Yeah,
let's be honest, dreadful acting. Like I mean, but it is hilarious.
yeah, it is
Like
hilarious. Yeah,
whenever I was watching this, I was like, this isn't high art or anything, but like I really don't understand why the critics shat on it. Like, because to me the only glaring issue is Tommy Morrison's acting. I
yeah,
feel like the narrative structure is pretty much similar to every other Rocky film, and I thought Sylvester Stallone's performance was the most admirable he's had. Uh, so I was sort of confused why the critics didn't appreciate this, and then Tommy Morrison rocked up, and I was like, yeah, fair.
yeah. I think the Tommy Morrison's performance isn't great. Although I think he does really good in the boxing scenes by the nature of it. He's a pro boxer. But the weirdest, I know I'm jumping ahead here, but I think maybe the weirdest final 10 minutes of a film I have potentially ever seen is when Tommy Gunn and his promoter corner Rocky in Philadelphia, in a bar in Philadelphia, and say we're fighting, and then it ends up being a street brawl where they're like hugging each other, they're wrestling each other. Rocky is definitely in the wrong there as well. Like his reputation
What?
should. No, 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 no. From the just no. I think Tommy Gunn's in the wrong, but Rocky, I think he should. In the real world, he probably would have received a lot of criticism for that, but for like descending to that from a street brawl. But it's in his character to fight back, so I respected it. And of course, I was on Rocky's side. But no, Tommy Gunn is. He's even attacking Rocky from when Rocky turns his back. It's not nice. It's awful. It's just not pleasant to watch as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous and weird, but like it kind of felt right then in this movie about him like returning to his roots of him returning to sort of financial poverty,
Hmm.
and then sort of him returning to his style of sort of a street brawl.
Yeah,
It seemed
I suppose
appropriate for
that's
the
a
film
good
that
point.
they've
Actually, yeah,
constructed, even though it's hilarious.
it
Let's be
is
honest.
hilarious. Yeah,
But one moment that sort of had me like seething, because by Rocky 3 I loved Apollo Creed, and that sort of like Michael B. Jordan, in the Creed films is sort of an extension of that character, being his son.
yeah,
So I sort of have a lot of admiration for Apollo Creed, and like the moment where like Rocky gives Tommy Gunn Apollo Creed shorts,
yes,
and
yeah.
we see him fighting, that had me seething. I
Yeah,
was
I
I was so
agree.
pissed off
I
at that.
agree. And the fact that, Tommy Gunn even quotes Rocky to say, like, and I'd like to thank the angel on my shoulder, my promoter, or whatever he says, like, Duke Washington,
Yeah.
I think his name, or George Washington Duke, I think is his name. That was like, that had me really riled up, man. I was so annoyed.
I mean, to be honest, like if I were Rocky, like I wouldn't give that much of a shit if some twat didn't thank me. Like, because Rocky has the love of the people, and like everybody hates Tommy Gunn, and says like "fuck you," you should love Rocky. So I
Yeah.
mean, I know he invested a lot of like time, effort, and love into Tommy Gunn, but like surely when you recognize like the toxicity of a person, you're glad to be rid of them.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
his relationship with his son, benefited from cutting him out of his life. So really, I thought by the end he wouldn't really give a shit. But
Yeah. I know what
that
you
was
mean. Like,
interesting.
I thought this Rocky film
Yep.
was quite unique actually because, as you said, it sort of shows Rocky in that more experienced role, and maybe that's why the critics didn't like it because there's not much actually Rocky fighting in it. I mean, Rocky's not in the ring at all in this film. But I quite liked the way it showed Rocky's like you said, buddy, the repercussions of his fight with Ivan Drago, and the fact that he's being betrayed by a new up and coming fighter. I thought that was really refreshing, and like I thought it was great. I don't know, I don't really understand the criticism behind it.
Yeah. For me, it's all Tommy Morrison.
Yeah,
Like Tommy
I know what you
Morrison
mean.
is the glaring issue.
Yeah.
But are we meant to feel sorry for Robert? Because like he keeps interrupting Rocky at work and like looking forlorn that Rocky isn't paying attention to him. Like, oh my dad, I wish you would pay attention. I'm like, he's like, it's like, do you want to eat? Like, he's trying to make like what little scraps of money he possibly can to put food on the table, and you're like looking like, oh, he just won't tell me he's proud of me for like punching a guy in the face and like
Getting
going
my
on this
coat
like
back.
weird, yeah, like hitting up this chick, like like he was like, oh, he loves like the nudie drawing I did of my teacher. Why won't he listen to me? Like trying to finesse this girl into
He's like a
dating
jealous
me. Like
girlfriend.
it was bizarre.
Oh god, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and honestly, like I expected the franchise to be like more rehashed than it is. Like I think the antagonist from in this film is the most different because he was a friend first. You know, every single Rocky villain is different except I guess uh I would say Mason in Rocky Balboa is a bit generic, but I think every Rocky nemesis is very distinct. And here having Tommy Gunn be sort of Rocky's mentee, it sort of meant that like Rocky felt like a sense of betrayal that he hadn't had before.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but I think you're 100% right on that. And like I think maybe the fact that this fight is or the final fight is a lot more personal than the previous fights, as well. Like especially I think compared to the Apollo Creed fight and the Clubber Lang fight, this fight is up there with the Ivan Drago fight. Is a very personal, bitter affair. And I thought that proved really well because I think the street brawl actually feels real. Like a lot of those punches feel really really gritty and like the action's really well done. So I've criticized it for being strange and a little bit out of nowhere, but it was very well executed. Credit where credit's due.
Did you have any final thoughts on the film?
Nothing for me, but if you've got nothing else, I'd love to hear your rating.
Yeah, so obviously, I think once again we need to rate this quality versus enjoyment
Yeah,
because I appreciated everything about this film. Even Tommy Morrison's acting because it made it more enjoyable. Like I feel like with a better actor, this film's just dull. But I
yeah.
but I think with his like overacting and his exaggerated accent, I found every scene he was in quite funny.
Mhm.
So I think that sort of amped up my enjoyment quite a lot. And I would say I probably enjoyed it an 8.5 out of 10 in quality. I think this film is technically worse than Rocky Four, so I'd maybe give it a 4.5.
Yeah,
But
that's
I think
fair,
it's
bud.
I think it's just below because I feel like the villains perform like the performance is funny, but I still think if you don't carry like any form of menace, I feel like that sort of dips the quality.
Yeah, that's fair, but I think you're right. I think for me, the quality of this film is maybe like a six, um, and enjoyment
So
and
you think do
entertainment.
you think it's technically better than Rocky Four?
I do. I think the fact that this film, there's not really any rehashed scenes. I don't know. Rocky Four felt quite lazy to me. I wasn't a fan of the US versus Russia dynamic, personally. But no, I think this film's quality better because there's more complex character motivations. I thought actually Sage did okay. I think the bond with him and his dad was actually quite believable. And he looks exactly like him as well. But no, that being said, I think entertainment, I'd probably give it a 8.5 as well. I think the fact that Rocky isn't actually in the boxing ring was a little bit disappointing for me. But that being said, I think it is unfairly criticized by critics. Although that being said, Tommy Morrison is definitely the weak point here for me. Um,
How do you feel that this was sort of meant to be the very final film of the franchise? Like, it says on sort of the quote of the collection, on the DVD case, it says, like a great way to hang up the gloves. This was meant to be, the full stop on the franchise. How do you feel if that was the last Rocky film we ever saw?
well, what you said, buddy, about it coming full circle, and Rocky has, somewhat, he's sort of transcended to that street brawler again. By the end, we see the people in Philadelphia cheering him on. They're right there in the fight with him. I quite like that as well. But I actually thought Rocky Balboa was a really good ending to Rocky's boxing journey, and I'm sort of glad that this film wasn't the final one. But I think even if it was, it would be okay. It would be okay. What about you, pal?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Him being in the same place as the first film, but the exception being that he now has a loving family and love of the people. I think that's enough for him. I think it sort of humbled him that he didn't have, the fancy car, the fancy house. I think,
Yeah,
going back to his roots, but having the love of everybody around him. I think that made him a more likable character, which is maybe why
I
this
agree.
this is my favorite portrayal of the franchise, at least to this point. I
I
would
agree.
say probably overall. I don't think there's a. And have you seen both of the Creed films or just the first one?
I haven't actually seen any of them in full. I've seen parts of the first one and parts of the second one, but not nothing massive.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about Rocky's role in those films, but I would say it's my favorite one here, and I think I I don't think I ever would have seen the Rocky films if they ended there though, because I feel like the only time I heard Rocky thrown about was with the sort of resurgence of like the fan community with the Creed films.
Yeah.
So like I don't even think I would have heard of Rocky if it wasn't for
Mhm.
Creed,
Yeah.
because I feel like that brought up the franchise again, and maybe in a
Yeah.
way that I,
Probably
I
me
wouldn't
too.
have
Yeah.
heard before.
Yeah.
Because I
No,
mean, how
me too.
iconic do you think the Rocky franchise is? Like, do you think it's the first Rocky film is like considered I think the second most influential sports film aside from Raging Bull. But I don't know. Is there anything special about these films that makes them particularly iconic? Do you think?
I think the music certainly the Rocky theme is iconic, but I think the overall message of it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about it's about the trials and tribulations. It's about the journey rather than the end point. I think that's really that's what where people relate to it, and I think it's about the everyman. I think that's why people like it, and I do think in terms of it's probably the most iconic sports film saga of all time. I think obviously it's weird because the members it's not the only big member of the cast is probably Michael B. Jordan and Sylvester Stallone and maybe Carl Weathers actually as well. He's pretty famous, but that be and I'm sorry, Dolph Lundgren, but I don't know, like it's not maybe on the level, of course, like a Back to the Future or a Jurassic Park, but I certainly think it is pretty important. Maybe not for quality, but for just sports films in general. Pal, what about you?
Yeah, as you said, it's really about like the triumph of the human spirit, and I think it's a nice message, even if the quality isn't exceptional.
Yeah,
Because I would say when it comes to actually the films within the Rocky films, the best quality one, I don't know, it's maybe two or three. Because I was gonna say Rocky Balboa, but I don't know, the editing's atrocious. And we'll get into that. So when it comes to the quality of the construction of the film, maybe the second or the third one.
I'd probably go for the third one's probably my favorite. Um, but I'd
But then I
say
don't I don't love
none of them
Clubber
are
Lang.
none of them are amazing quality wise. Really, I think they're all very
No.
entertaining, but they're not like none of them were a Back to the Future. None of them were like a Back to the Future level of quality where all three of those films are great for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
That there's never like a massive crash where I'm like, oh, I hate this. I had a
Yeah. No,
terrible
I agree.
experience.
I agree for
And
sure.
I think to get through this many films and have that
Yeah.
that to say about that, I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
a pretty good track record.
For sure.
So if you wanted to get into Rocky Balboa,
Absolutely.
you know, one of the first establishing scenes about how Rocky's life has changed in the 30 years between is that Adrian has since died, and my immediate reaction was, why did they not kill Paulie? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Paulie, I would say, I said this
Literally.
earlier, I think he's at his peak dickhead here because he doesn't even let Rocky like properly grieve for his wife. You know, he complains that,
Mhm.
he's like, going on this tour of all the important places and like that were integral to their relationship, and he's like,
Yeah,
you said the same thing last year, and he's like, he has brain damage, dickhead, and
yeah.
his wife has only died 3 years ago. Have some fucking human
Have
compassion.
respect. Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. And it's weird because I think Talia Shire she's still alive, so it's a curious decision to kill her character off.
Yeah, I think it was maybe just they saw no further development, for the character. They pretty much killed off, I guess, all the major characters that they, because like they can't kill Rocky, so they killed Apollo Creed, and then he went through a whole relationship with his son, which is even continued here. So maybe they just felt they ran out of development and they wanted to see Rocky sad again. Like maybe they were like, he was too happy by the end. They
Mm.
needed to see him sort of brought back down to his bare bones, and then he had to like build up relationships with the characters that had been
Yeah,
established in previous films.
I think you're right, buddy. I think it's a very interesting premise here for like an older, aging Rocky, and you got to feel bad for him. I think the fact that the restaurant was called Adrian's is a really nice touch, and I quite like that development where like he becomes like that sort of persona in the restaurant where like he's telling everyone he's boxing stories. Like I'd imagine if that happened in real life, that'd be very successful. If like a really success like Anthony Joshua, like in like 10 or 15 years time, started his own restaurant called AJ's or something. Like I can
Yeah,
imagine him like going around everyone
he's a
telling
bit of a
stories.
Luke Cage character, like the
Yes,
man of the people,
man of the
like the local
people.
hero.
Exactly. That's so true, man. And I think the introduction of the character of Marie is actually really, really interesting as well because it kind of represents that character for him to sort of help and sort of be a mentor to as well, which she's actually from Belfast.
Oh yeah, yeah. I looked that up.
Yeah.
She has like a top-notch American accent,
Oh,
but
yeah,
my
absolutely.
favorite thing about that is that we had mentioned that character sort of extensively in our review of the first Rocky film, where she
Yeah.
goes, "Up yours, creepo,"
Up yours.
or is it like,
Yeah.
or is it no? It's
Screw you,
screw you,
creepo.
creepo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she does like an up yours sign. Yeah, she like that. That was one of my favorite moments. Even though it was a bit full on for him to say like, "You're smoking, you're talking to boys, you'll be a whore if you don't sort yourself out." I was like, okay. I
Rocky.
mean, I was
Yeah.
just waiting because like he is fairly misogynistic. At some points I was waiting for him to say like, "Do you have a son?" Because I was right. Like, I thought he'd be like a real knobhead about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
literally.
so it was great to see that character back, and I'm sort of surprised that she never reemerges. Because they sort of seem to establish quite a close bond. Not
Mhm.
not not romantic, but he sort of befriended her son's steps. In sort of the way that he befriended
Tommy Gunn. Also.
kids throughout the
Yeah.
franchise, and how he sort of befriends Adonis Creed in the following Creed films. So I was
Mhm.
sort of surprised to never see those characters make a reoccurrence, but
Agreed, mate. Actually,
it
I
was nice.
agree
It
with
was
you.
nice to see them nonetheless.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about like Rocky's fight throughout this film, because this is obviously his main motivation. He trains throughout the film. For this fight this exposition, so this exhibition fight that he's going to have with what's the name of the character?
Mason
Mason
Dixon, I think.
Mason Dixon. So but I feel that Rocky has nothing to prove. Which is pointed out by Robert, and Rocky agrees, but then I don't know why he would want to fight. He says, you're right, I have nothing to prove, but I'm just a fighter. I think competitive fighting is entertainment, but like these films sort of treat it as though it's like some sort of divine purpose that will help someone. But I think it's maybe just I'm not that way inclined.
Yeah.
But like I
I don't
just
know,
don't
mate.
see
I'm
why he has
like,
this burning desire to fight again. He's like, oh, I was built to fight, and I'm like, that
that time's
like,
over.
who
Like that time's
cares? I'm like,
past,
I'm
kind of
sorry,
thing.
I'm sorry, but like, who cares? Like, you know, you're a successful restaurateur. You know,
Yeah.
you've been the heavyweight champion of the world. Like, it can only go down from here. Like
It's
I
so
feel like
true.
once you've peaked, just ride on that. Like, he has the respect of everybody around him. So I don't
That's
know
so
what he
interesting, Callum. Yeah.
expects to achieve other than probable death.
That's so interesting to do because I think the main message of Rocky Five was that yes, it's okay having the glorified, heavyweight belt around your waist, but at the end of the day, it's about your love for your family and your friends that really means something. I think that is the message of Rocky Five. Tommy Gunn has heavyweight champion of the world, and we've seen Mason Dixon as heavyweight champion of the world here, but they're no more respected because of it. It's clear that the fans and the people still love Rocky because he's a family man, because he's a man of the people, because he's one of them. And I think the fact that I think maybe the message of this film would be that Rocky's okay with that. He's okay with not fighting Mason Dixon. Like as you said, he's nothing to prove. But one thing I really like about that character is when he goes to to the people to get his boxing license renewed. I think the fact that he's like, oh no, I just want to do it because I want to. Like, it's just my love for it. Like, it's what I want to do. Why would you stop me from doing something I want to do? Like, I know I've got nothing to prove. It's just because I want to do it. I respected that from the character. And it's weird because this might be a hot take, but I actually felt really bad for Mason Dixon. I don't know, because like he's publicly ridiculed, but I mean he's just because there's no other big threats in the heavyweight division, like he's just beat who he's put in front of him. Like he's not super arrogant or anything. Like I think he's just a normal guy who plays basketball in the spare time, and he seems like a nice guy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he seems no more like that there seems to be no more ability to criticize him than Apollo Creed. Like Apollo Creed was this, he was a shrewd, smart businessman, but he was also like sort of this annoying, arrogant showboat.
Yeah,
But Mason Dixon just seemed to be like, yeah, a subtle guy that they just resent for winning. And it's not as though he took the title off Rocky or off
yeah.
someone that they loved. I don't know. Like we obviously don't know who has been the heavyweight champion since, I assume, because Tommy Gunn was arrested at the end of Rocky 5. I assume he had to relinquish the title, and then that was taken up by someone else. But we sort of talk. We hear about in the Creed films that or there's one film where because like a fight was just you know like a title was relinquished and someone was just given the title, they didn't have to win it, so that person
Oh, the
didn't get respect.
vacant.
I understand that.
Yeah, like the vacant heavyweight
Yeah,
title. Yeah,
was
yeah.
that in Creed, or was that something else?
I know what you mean.
I think it's maybe the Tony Bellew's character just got the title, is it? And
Yeah,
that he
like
didn't have to win it.
yeah, like I think yeah, I think what happens is if the heavyweight champion retires or doesn't like, so what I think in real life, if the heavyweight champion, wins the title, right? I think in a certain period of time they have to fight again, otherwise they will lose the belt.
Yeah,
And so that belt is either, I'm not sure if the belt is like then given to the closest challenger. So in that case, probably Ricky Conlan, Tony Bellew's character, or unless like he fought for that in another fight. But I'm not sure how it works actually, buddy. To be honest with you, but
yeah,
I think that is I think you're right.
yeah. I think
I
that's how
think
it works. Yeah, yeah. But I don't remember which film it is that's an issue that's brought up. And I think it's maybe Creed, because I
yeah, I
think
think you're right.
Creed gets the title off someone who was like referred to as like a paper champion. He was just given the title through like the retirement of the previous champion. But, Mason Dixon isn't that. He's fought, and I feel like he earns. I feel like he deserves
Yeah.
respect. And
Mm-hmm.
he ends the film. Uh, you know, like he
Undefeated.
ends the film giving Rocky his respect. They have that mutual respect. So I don't know why he doesn't have the love of the people that I feel
Yeah.
like he deserves.
Yeah, I think like his record or something's like 33, I know, with like 30 knockouts. Like at the end of the day, like the press sort of ridicule him and make fun of him for saying, "Oh, you've only fought bums, you've just fought." But then again, like he's fought who was put in front of him at the time. Just because there's no other relatively good challengers in the heavyweight division doesn't mean he's bad. Like he could just be the best. He could, like, they're trying to suggest that he's the best of a bad bunch. But what if he was just a good fighter out of a sea of badness? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly. It's not his fault that other people are shit.
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, I think, like you said, the Rocky's motivation is an interesting one because he sort of acknowledges that he's nothing to prove, but he wants to do it anyway, and that really comes to a head in his conversation with Robert, which is probably one of the most iconic Rocky scenes of all time, where he's like, "It's not about how hard you get hit; it's about how hard you can hit." Sorry, it's not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you get hit and keep moving forward, which is a really good message for the film. That's a staple of the character, I suppose, in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the sort of the scene where he appears before the council, attempting to get a license to
Yes,
fight.
yes. Mm-hmm.
And they say that he passed all the tests with flying colors, and I don't know how he's passing any test with brain
With
damage.
brain damage, that's
Like,
what I thought as
yeah,
well. I
like
thought they
they
were going
go
to say,
like,
no, we
oh
can't.
yeah, you've nailed all the tests, but still no. And I'm
But
like,
yeah.
surely you need like a brain scan.
The film just disregards the whole brain damage and like shaking hand thing that he has going on in Rocky 5, doesn't it? They just say, yeah, he's old now, but he still wakes up in the morning and does his pull-ups. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of
Yeah.
weird.
Do you think that's maybe a choice because Sylvester Stallone directed 4 of the 6 of these films, and the ones he didn't direct were the first and the fifth one. So do you think maybe he just had a certain vision for the character of Rocky that wasn't consistent. I mean, he wrote Rocky 5, so like I don't know
Yeah.
how big a departure that could have possibly given. And I feel like that added depth to the character and consequence to the
I agree.
franchise. So
Yeah.
I feel like sort of just like binning it off, just yeah, it feels insincere.
It does, mate. It does. Like that being said, I actually think the final fight in this film is the best fight we've seen so far. Like it's shot like an actual boxing fight. The press conference before it is like shot like an actual press conference. And I actually think Stallone is in great. I don't know how old he is here. I'd imagine. I think they say like this guy's in his like 50s at this point. And I think Stallone. I think he's like 70, 75 now. So what would he have been then? Like 60s or something?
He was 60, yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's in great shape. Like he is, like he looks great. To be honest, like he
Yeah,
looks fantastic.
I'm a bit jealous.
Absolutely,
But
me too.
the character of Marie, we've talked about briefly,
Yes,
and
yeah,
the only other time that I find something notable from her is Rocky sort of doubting whether he should go through with the fight. He says like, well, what if I lose? Should I really go through with it? And
mhm.
Marie says, why not? It's only an exposition. Maybe because the fact that it's it being advertised as an exhibition fight doesn't mean anything. Like the last exhibition fight that we've seen in this franchise led to the death of Apollo Creed. You
Yeah,
know, and he was in like
yeah.
his peak physical condition. Like Rocky is 60 years old, and you're like, why not?
Why not? Yeah, I do know what you mean. 100%. Like I think if Mickey was alive at this point, he'd be saying, "Don't take the fight." That's a thing.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
you sort of mentioned Stallone's physique, and I think because of his age, this is the most impressive training sequence. The fact that he's capable of doing any of that. He's lifting some serious weight, and
oh
I
yeah,
it's
man,
it's it's it's
absolutely.
it's genuinely impressive.
He's one of those actors, dude, where like I felt bad because I had a little bit of a like not a disliking, but a little bit of an ignorance towards him before I had seen these films. Like, oh, he's a wannabe Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's just an action focused actor, but he's actually a really lovely guy as well. I've seen in interviews. Like I was watching like a Q&A he did during lockdown. He actually seems like a really lovely guy as well, and I think he's had a lot of trauma in his personal life as well, to be honest with. Like
Yeah,
obviously Sage has passed away at the young age of 36, I think. And I think I'm not sure if his wife as well has had passed away or other family relatives, but I don't know, his brother maybe as well.
he's had about four different wives, I think. Like one of his wives uh was actually the actress who played Ivan Drago's wife.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
interesting.
like at the time they were married. Like so, presumably he cast her because it was his girlfriend or his wife at the time.
Yeah,
From what I can tell, they didn't like meet on set. I think
yeah.
they were dating at least at that point. So it must have been awkward for her to come back in Creed 2. Like he's just like avoiding eye contact.
Yeah, I know. Like, he seems like a lovely guy though off camera, and he's obviously a very creative individual as well. Writing and directing his own movies, and this is probably one of my favorite Rocky films so far. Actually, I'm a big fan of this one.
I think it's the one I least enjoyed, but I think it's undoubtedly the best film, or on par, I would say, with Rocky 2 in my opinion. And I know you
Yeah,
favor Rocky 3, but I would say this is on
Rocky
par
Two is
in
good as
quality
well.
to Rocky 2. But when it comes, my only gripe with this film really, aside from Rocky's motivation to fight, is the editing of the final boxing match. It's borderline unwatchable. Like the shift between like color and black and white, and like
Yes, yeah, I know.
and they edit in archival footage, and they're doing like these fast zooms and like that kind of shot, of like
Yeah.
like what's going on? Like
Yeah,
it's horrendous.
I do know what you
Like
mean.
I had a
100%.
headache watching it.
100%. The editing in this film is really bad. Like, there's scenes that last a mere 30 seconds, and there's it's a very slow burn towards the start. Like, if you're not a Rocky fan, I think we're both Rocky fans at this point, but if you're not a Rocky fan and you're watching
Yeah,
this film, I don't think you could survive like 20 minutes. Like, it is rough to start off with. Like, it's just him going to the restaurant, talking to Polly, going to the grave, going to the restaurant, talking to Polly, going to the grave. Like, that's mostly what it is. And it's weird because the editing isn't, it's borderline shit.
oh
That's actually
yeah, it is.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it is shit, isn't it?
and we've sort of talked about this very recently in our review of Mank, which you can check out now.
Absolutely.
We talked about sort of which medium is the form of film. Who's responsibility is it to make that piece as good as possible.
Yeah.
And I think you need a good script, you need good editing. You can have uninspired directing and not great acting,
Yeah.
but without great editing and without a great script, I think a film's a failure. And this film, I think, is well directed, is well scripted, but the editing, like you notice bad editing right away.
You do.
Like the editing can be uninspired, the directing can be uninspired, but you notice bad writing and you notice bad editing, and it was glaring.
It was. No, I think you're right. I do think you're right, buddy. I think it's weird 'cause I think it's the best quality film, but it's the one that's, along with Rocky 4, in my opinion, one of the worst edited. It's I don't know if that makes sense. But it's weird because it's something I quite like about a film where the protagonist is an aging one. That's why I quite like Logan. Like, he's like the underdog in that film, and like he's an aging character. I think that's why we both like Peter B. Parker. Like, he's an aging Spider-Man as well. And there's something I quite like about that. And in here, that's probably why I like this film as well. So I don't have any more notes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I sort of like jaded, cynical characters. Peter B.
Yeah.
Parker is probably my favorite Spider-Man ever. Probably up there with Tobey Maguire. But my final thing was just obviously every time we talk about the training montage and we talk about the fight. So if we want to talk about the outcome of the fight, I was really glad that Rocky didn't win, because it felt truer to the message of the first film, which was about America being the land of opportunity. And if he sort of sauntered in as a 60-year-old who was already past his prime and had his opportunity and sort of stole it from Mason Dixon, it would have felt sort of disingenuous to the message of the first film.
Yeah, and the fact that it replicates the first outcome from the first film, it came full circle. If you know what I mean, like, Rocky, and the fact that Rocky doesn't win, he's happy with that because he just does it because he loves it. Like, it's a sort of similar reason why I'm trying to think, why certain directors would work in certain films even if they didn't do well critically, I guess, or financially rather. It's because they want to do it because they love for it. They don't do it for any successful financial repercussions, and that's the reason why Rocky probably is happy. He just does it because of the love of it. Just doesn't really care about the outcome, which I thought was a good message. So you're right, 100%, mate.
So how would you rate the film, Matthew?
I think the quality of the film's up there with an 8.5. The 1.5 deduction of the marks is probably because of the editing. The editing is not great. But it's well shot, and I quite like sort of the. Would you say it's a? I can't remember where it's this film or the film. No, it's Rocky 5, where it's like it's a Christmas. Would you count that as a Christmas film, because it's got to take place at Christmas?
It's dreadful.
It is. Yeah.
Like they're that film's so weird. But yes, that's Rocky 5.
Yeah, but
I would not count it as a Christmas film.
No, it's definitely not. But no, Rocky Balboa. I quite like the structure of the film, in the sense that coming full circle. But that being said, editing's not great. Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, amazing, of course. Paulie, not great, as always. But Mason Dixon, I thought, was quite good. A bit bland in parts, but I felt bad for him. Overall, a good conclusion to Rocky Balboa's journey, at least 8.5. What would you give it, bud?
Yeah, I don't think my enjoyment was low enough that I need to sort of separate the scores with quality and enjoyment. It is the one that I enjoyed least, just because I think it's the one that takes itself most seriously, which I sort of enjoyed, like the silliness by the end. How ridiculous Tommy Morrison is. I find it quite funny. But here there's no laughs to be had. It's quite like sincere and forlorn, which isn't really what I would want from this sort of silly franchise, at least. But it sort of made me sort of like redefine how I find the series. But so my enjoyment was slightly lower, but the quality is obviously higher, minus the editing. So I think it balances in around a 7.
That's fair,
because I would agree, I would sort of adjust it for quality with the editing, and then my enjoyment sort of lowers it a little.
Mm-hmm.
There was something I was going to ask you. I don't remember now. Shit.
Was it something about the Creed films or anything like that? No.
No, I don't think so. Never mind. But
no worries.
Yeah, so as you said, Stallone is great. I think he gives the second best performance after Rocky 5. I thought he.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Mason Dixon. I didn't think he was much of a presence, but every scene he was in, perfectly admirable. The acting performance. You said he's a professional fighter.
Yeah.
So I
I
thought
think he
his
was
acting
world
performance
heavyweight
was
champ at the time.
yeah, I think his acting performance is perfectly admirable in comparison to like Tommy Morrison's
Tommy
and Mr.
Morrison's.
T, who's like Mr. T is actually an actor. Like it's not like he has the physique of like a brawler, but
Yeah.
he's an actor,
A team,
and he's
right?
just
So yeah.
yeah, he's just horrendous. Let's be honest. Like
Yeah.
but yeah, I enjoyed the film somewhat, and I could appreciate its quality.
That's great, man. Well, listen, that's the Rocky films done, or at least Stallone's Rocky films, at least. So we've covered off another big franchise, pal, in a matter of, in a couple of weeks. So that was good. That was good. And I suppose we can now move on to future episode chat because Callum and I have been talking a lot off pod about updating the schedule for you guys and putting out a lot of new mini reviews and podcasts. So I'll pass over to Callum for what's coming this week, ending the 20th of December. So over to you, my friend.
So at the weekend, we'll be recording a review for Tenet, which neither of us have seen at this point, and it's been a long time since it came out in cinemas. But I think I'm sort of appreciative that I can watch it on my TV because I mean I sort of have quite bad hearing, and hearing how sort of indistinguishable the dialogue is, I'm sort of appreciative to have it available with subtitles. Are
Yeah.
you of the same mind?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I have to watch everything with subtitles these days, especially the Rocky films. But no, I don't know. I think I quite like watching stuff with subtitles as well. It just helps with the narrative of the film for me. I think you're the same.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I watch everything with it, and yeah, that's when I can hear it perfectly well. I think reading along with it sort of pulls you into the narrative. But over the weekend, in addition, we will also be recording an episode which we were potentially sort of talking about recording in person, but it was my thought at least that we might not actually enjoy these films that much, because they're quite dated, and they're considered Christmas classics, or old, not Christmas classics in the manner of people love them in the manner that they're old. Let's be honest, in the sense that we talk about American classics.
Yeah.
This is sort of Christmas staple films, and we'll be talking about Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life. And then when we do our next our next podcast after that is the one that we'll hopefully be recording in person, which I think will be a lot of fun because it's our favorite Christmas films.
Absolutely.
Now I've suggested that we each pick two that we love. Uh, if I was to throw out my opinions, it'd probably be Gremlins and
Oh, good
Home
shout.
Alone.
Good shout. Home
I
Alone and
actually
Gremlins, good shout.
I maybe prefer Home Alone 2, but I feel like for the sake of chronology, I feel like I'd be willing to say Home Alone.
I'm
So
gonna.
if you were to
Yeah,
sort of throw out
it's a good shout.
two shouts for yourself, what would you say?
Well, I'm just gonna look at Christmas movies here that I quite enjoy. Well, you know what? One film that I think probably would be up there, but I haven't seen is probably Batman Returns. Now, I think you quite like that film. Is it a Christmas
I
film
do love
inherently?
Batman Returns.
Is it a? Is it? Do you think if someone said to you that's a good Christmas film, would you accept that that is a Christmas film kind of thing?
It's definitely a Christmas film, but I would like to sort of show some personality this year, Matthew, and I want to see some nostalgic picks from you that you genuinely love,
Okay,
because
well,
I feel like covering we can definitely cover Batman films, sometime between now and the release of the 2022 film. I think we both hope to have our friend Jack on for the Dark
yes.
Knight trilogy, and
Mhm.
we can sort of discuss between ourselves, who maybe we want to have on for the additional Batman films. I
Well,
was wondering, have you spoken to Cash about the perfect date?
I have, and he said he's going to watch it and he's going to get back to us when he's watched it. So that is going to be good. So Perfect Date is going to star our best bud Cash as well because he was back for Kissing Booth 1 and Kissing Booth 2. And is Kissing Booth 3 coming out next year?
Yes, it is coming out sometime next year.
Yes,
Like
yes.
they filmed 2 and 3 back to back, so I assume they're going to be of similar quality. So probably not good then.
Yeah. Well, for me, for unconventional Christmas films, I would say Arthur Christmas might be there. I'm not sure if I have yet to decide. Arthur Christmas is always a favorite of mine. And then, I don't know. Iron Man 3 takes place at Christmas, but it's not a
Please
Christmas
don't.
film. I'm not
And
gonna
we've
know. It's
talked
not.
about it before.
Yeah, I know talked about it before. So Arthur Christmas, and then I might have to put on the night before and see what it's like, and then I see if I like it because
Okay.
obviously I bought it on DVD. I've been meaning to watch it, so hopefully that'll make the list. But anyway, it's been an
I
absolute
mean, you,
pleasure.
you, you
Oh,
threw out you threw out Elf as a potential, didn't
Elf,
you, as
yeah,
well?
yeah, I like Elf. I'm a bit who everyone loves Elf, right? So I'll probably
Are you a fan of The Grinch?
it terrified me as a kid, so absolutely not. But but yeah, I've yet to decide. But that should be a good episode. And then, of course, this week, Wonder Woman 84 comes out, and hopefully we'll be reviewing that probably like around this time next week or whenever. I don't know. Do you think that'll be a podcast? Do you reckon? Because it could be a bit of a long one. Like I think Birds of Prey was a podcast for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, accidentally. I mean, the issue is, when we see a film in the cinema and then have to review it, we're sort of like, uh, lack attention to the film because we're trying to remember points before we write them down. Whereas
Exactly.
when we watch something at home, we just write it down as it happens.
Yeah.
So that's the minor issue with going to the cinema. But so I'm maybe thinking the notes will be a bit more sparse because I sort of want
Yeah,
to
I think so.
sort of I want to pay more close attention to that film than I did the last couple that we reviewed
Yeah.
after the cinema.
Of course, and but yeah, obviously we've covered the Rocky films, so the Creed films will be coming out soon, or our review of them at least. And but yeah, thanks very much, Callum, for your time today. I appreciate it. Thanks very much, everyone who has
Thank you.
watched this episode. We really appreciate it. And yeah, hope you guys are all well. Hope your family and friends are all safe and well. And take care of yourself, guys. And bye bye.
Bye bye.